Dictation number SV1506. Get ready. Start. Inaugurating the Indian Public Schools Conference, the President of India said, I am very grateful for having invited me to this function. I deem this both a privilege and an honor. I do not propose to inflict a long speech on you. I would, however, be falling in my duty if I do not share with you some thoughts that often come to my schools of their place in the national system of education and of the contribution they can and should make to the improvement of school education in the country. The public schools in India, which now include Sainik schools also, have a number of commendable features. They all strive to impart good education and to maintain standards. Their emphasis is on providing an all-round education which, in addition to the usual curriculum of general education, includes a welcome emphasis on the development of skills in using hands-on art education and especially on physical education, games and sports. But the situation in the country has changed very rapidly during the last 20 years and will undergo very great changes in the years ahead. The public schools cannot remain unaffected in this changing social environment. For their development and even for their survival, they will have to move with the times, and for this purpose, two major steps are necessary. The first is that the public schools must strive to become a part of the national system of education and contribute to its development rather than stand out in a glorified isolation. The second is that they must take into account all the criticism that is often made of the public schools and of the growing hostility against them in certain quarters. It may be easy to laugh it or to ignore it altogether as misinformed criticism, but it is hardly desirable. A much better approach would be to take it seriously, to analyze its cause and to adopt measures which will overcome it, so that the public schools come to be valued as a progressive institutions which make a useful contribution for the development of education in the society as a whole. I would like to place a few things before you for your consideration on these two issues. In addition to the maintenance of good educational standards, I would like the public schools to be distinguished by two important features. The first is their contribution to national integration as institutions with an all-India character which draw their students from all parts of the country. This valuable aspect of your work will have to be developed further, and I would request you to strive earnestly to promote a sense of national unity and solidarity. The unity of this country has to be built within its educational institutions. The curriculum of our schools, colleges and universities must be so formulated and taught that every student will have an understanding of our inheritance, of the problem that we are facing at present, and of the type of new society which we desire to create for ourselves. It must also give every student a proper pride in our past, a responsible and dignified approach to our present, and faith and confidence in our future. You are doing something in the field already. I would like to intensify this aspect of your work and develop programs and tools which could be used in other schools also. Yet another aspect in which your schools should distinguish themselves is experimentation. I know that a good deal of experimentation does go on in your institutions at present, but I would like it to be emphasized even more in future so that it becomes your most distinctive attribute. It is though such experimentation which can be extended to the general school system also, that you will make your valuable contribution to the development of school education in the country. While people generally appreciate the good features of the public schools, we must also undertake that there are certain weaknesses in the existing system which invite comment, criticism and even hostility. Quality of education is a very desirable goal, no doubt, but it should not be too exclusive, too costly and too closely allied to privilege. It is these aspects of your institutions that, in my opinion, deserve close consideration at your hands. Let me first take the point about exclusiveness. The number of your members is very small at present, about 40. May I suggest for your consideration that you might think of a policy of enlarging your membership. I have one suggestion to make for your consideration regarding costs. I do realize that good education will cost more and that education in public schools will always remain at a much higher level than that in the common schools. But I would like this difference to be reduced to the extent possible. It may be possible to cut down some extravagant expenditure which is not really relevant to the maintenance of standards. But what is even more important is that the desirability of admitting day scholars in increasing numbers, subject of course to an upper limit, because I would not like a school to be too big. The admission of such scholars will have two advantages. Firstly, the facilities of education in public schools will be available to a large number of families who do not desire or need to place their children in hostels. Secondly, the cost per student will go down considerably as the proportion of day scholars increases. There is a reform which is long overdue and I commend it for your consideration. The third point is even more important. Barring a very small minority of scholarship holders, the vast bulk of your students now comes from the privileged groups. This isolation of the children of the privileged social groups in the most impressionable period of their life is not good either for them or for the country. It is therefore very necessary to take early steps to end this undesirable segregation which now takes place in the institutions of this type. I would therefore suggest that you should consider the desirability and the possibility of instituting a certain proportion of scholarships to talented students who do not have the financial means to join your institutions. Stop.